Well, hello, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, it's going to be a really fun episode because I'm not joined by one guest. We have three amazing, talented, wonderful guests. We have Alisa, Linda, and Kathleen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you
to be here.
I always enjoy doing sessions with multiple voices, multiple people. And I think that I share something in common when we talk about doing sessions with multiple people. You hosted a panel at VRMA with, I don't know the number, but you have to tell me, with
300.
many. Oh, no, that's the attendees. But how many property management companies were on the panel?
There were 14 property management companies and one independent company that built their own proprietary software.
Fantastic. So 15 panelists in the end.
Yes.
Yes.
So the session of VRMA with 15 panelists on it, which of course can be tricky because to ask that many panelists the right number of questions can be arbitrary, but you put in so much work beforehand to get a lot of the answers through, so that by the time you got there, it was more of a get to know you. I really enjoyed it. It was the PMS Showdown. It was an incredible session. So I wanted to get the organizers of that session onto the Accommodation Show for a few reasons. One is to just learn a little bit about your backgrounds, how the idea came to be. Then we might talk about some of the learnings on the process of getting there, and then maybe a little bit of a retrospective on it as well. And for those people that are listening, and you're thinking, well, why do I want to know how they put together and that sort of thing? The industry has changed so much, and there are so many tech companies that are coming up all the time. And one of the number one questions that I get asked is, who do I go with? And this is a challenge that these ladies have been working on. So if it's okay with you, if you could please, all three of you, one at a time, just introduce yourselves, just a little bit about where you're located, and then maybe a little bit about your experience in the industry, and then we'll kind of roll from there. Maybe Alisa, and then Kathleen, and then Linda.
I've been in the industry almost 22 years now, and I started out at a company that is no longer out there, Visual Data Systems, doing digital marketing. I was a project manager, support person. So I've talked to I've talked to property managers from all over the country, continued my journey through Blue Tent, doing the same thing and expanding, and just working with property managers to help them do all kinds of to get a process around their digital ecosystem, so to speak. And that includes distribution and software. And when you're talking to people every day, they ask that same question, Bart. They ask that question, Alisa, what software should I talk to? And the answer is, that's a question you've got to figure out on your own.
Yeah, because it applies for everybody. We'll come back to that. Kathleen.
So I have been in the industry probably the least among the three of us. I have been in the industry about 4 years, but I have been a property owner and rental owner for 2 decades. I've also lived in probably about 12 to 13 vacation rental destinations, including overseas. And so right now I hang my hat in Cape May, New Jersey, which is America's original seashore resort. That's right. The first place people went to the beach to go and enjoy themselves is in the great state of New Jersey. And one of the things is I'm a New Jersey real estate agent, as well as still in the property management space. However, I'm also co-owner of Switchback Email. And one of the things that is always interesting to me is we talk about direct bookings all the time. Mm-hmm. But where direct booking starts is really with the property management software system that you choose. That's the foundation. You know, in real estate, we talk about a good foundation. If you have a poor foundation, you can only build the house so high. So choosing the right property management software system really dictates how big and how broad your business can go.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And Linda. tell
So
us a bit about where you fit in.
So I have been in the industry longer than Alisa. I'll leave it at that. And started out as a child when I was on the Outer Banks as a property manager. And then from there, I actually moved and worked for a software company with multiple products. Most of those products are no longer on the market. To your point, they're coming and going all the time. But they were some of the original products within the vacation rental space. Over the years, I was very active in the VRMA and the NC VRMA. I was in North Carolina at the time, and currently work with Alisa at Silicon Travel as a project manager. And, I've been doing vacation rentals all my life, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And on the side, I've owned a couple of vacation rentals, although I've kind of retired from that aspect of the industry at this point.
Yeah. Look, Kathleen, by the way, I did come back to one point that you made before. You said, you don't have as much tenure, but I think that 4 years is enough. I think that, of course, you learn more as you go, but like I've been at it for 5 years, and I feel that I've got a lot more depth. The first few years are pretty dicey, but then I think after that, you kind of you get your feet. So don't discount yourself on just 4 years.
Well,
Now, look,
I probably should have prefaced that with a little bit that I worked in the management of a vacation rental company that had over 2,500 listings
oh,
across
okay.
multiple states. So I, did jump off the deep end in the vacation rental world and have a little bit to go on behind. It's just that I found an opportunity that I couldn't pass up
Yeah,
to
no,
go
I
ahead
understand
and
that.
broaden my horizons.
Cool. So look, a very well-studied panel of people that I've got to talk to today. A lot of experience, and look, let's just get straight into the topic at hand. The session. Can one of you please explain the session itself, what it was titled, and what it was all about?
Kathleen, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Well, the session first came about because someone happened to call me on the phone and ask me, I have a really terrible idea. Are you in? And, my first answer is, of course, yes, because I'm Jersey. And so it really came about, we were brainstorming about an idea for VRMA, and many, many people submit sessions over and over. And a lot of times I think there's a lot of repetition that comes in there. And we were really looking for an idea that was going to stand out, something that didn't exist before, something that had never been done. And it really kind of comes back down to property management software. We talk about that foundational part of any vacation rental company, and it really starts at the property management software level. But there's really no resources out in the industry for anyone really trying to choose property management software other than the show floor at these conferences. And, as part of our original submission, I always said that's the worst place to shop. It's like going to a car dealership sometimes, and you're just bombarded with information. But there's nothing that allows you to do any side-by-side comparison or really give you any idea of what software actually fits the business that you run. And part of the issue that we identified is that when people choose their property management software system, they're not always experienced in the vacation rental industry to actually know the questions that they should be asking or the things that they should be looking for when they go to choose property management software system. So really, this organically came around between the three of us to come up with an idea of how do we make that better? How do we make that different? And that's really where this whole session started from.
And I also think it's important to add to that is that the three of us have no stake in software at this point in our career. We're not getting paid by the software companies. We don't recommend a certain software company over another, but we all love our property management, our VR family, and we want to be able to help them. So what better session idea than help them narrow down the 50 million different software choices they have out there, and bring the best of the best together on a stage. So it really, in the beginning, my idea popped into my head because Linda and I, being older in the industry, said, remember when there was only 5 choices of software. And we laughed, and I put a LinkedIn post up, and people just thought that was hysterical. And now there was probably about 22 software companies at VRMA, but there are legitimately like 65 here in the US that US property managers can choose from.
I believe the number is in the hundreds, like hundreds. I think it's like 400 or 500 property management systems across the industry. From the research that I've done and looked at, because the one things that we don't see is, for example, in Europe there'll be another 5. Over here in Australia, there's maybe about 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe that I can think of off the top of my head that you would never have heard of, right? So then you
Right.
break them up across the world, and you quite easily get into the hundreds in terms of different options and which ones are suitable or not. Now, So, Kathleen, I love that the idea is that we're solving a problem, and it's a very common problem of how do we choose, and it's probably it's a very ambitious task, right? To actually be able to solve it correctly for everybody, or to be able to give them the answer, but you can at least start to make inroads and to do that. So, the idea was we need to solve the problem. How do you choose a property management system, and then what was kind of the next step?
Well, the next step was really getting buy-in from the participants to go ahead and give us information or to ask them to participate in something that had never been done before. When you go to these software companies and ask them to provide information, there's a hesitance to do that because they don't realize what that information is going to be used for. And in some cases, we found they didn't necessarily know the information off the top of their heads either.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second, because one thing that we haven't covered off is what the actual session ended up being, sort of the topic of this session, and then who was that there was actually a panel of all the property management systems. I don't know whether we covered that particular part. What was the name of the session in the end?
It was called the
Property
Software
Management
Showdown.
Software Showdown. Yeah.
The Software Showdown.
And then the idea was that they're going to compete with each other, that they're going to provide information. Because obviously, before we get the buy-in, I want to understand what we're pitching to them.
So the idea was to get all of these software companies up there on the stage, but to preliminarily sent them 120 questions.
Okay.
A questionnaire that Linda, Kathleen, and I worked together on. It was a very thoughtful, we phoned a friend, we called different vendors, we put these 120 thoughtful questions together in different categories because we were only given 45 minutes. VRMA gave us 45 minutes. And imagine trying to tell everybody about 15 different software companies within 45 minutes. It's not going to happen. So what we had to do was decide how we were going to deliver something that was useful to property managers in that 45 minutes, thus the scouting report. Yay! I'm glad you got
Just gonna grab mine.
So
we traveled all the way from Australia just to pick up this.
Yes.
And you have no idea how many people I've shared this link with.
Well, there is a QR code in the back of that. So
yeah, I've got the link. I'm sharing it with everybody. So
wonderful. So what we had to do was figure out what kind of atmosphere we wanted to create to generate a buzz and have fun. We needed to figure out how we were going to make it so that when a property manager attended, they left with something that was going to help them on their journey of choosing software. And we also wanted to be fair that the software companies were putting in time, give them the ability to show off their logo, show off their salespeople, and give them a little bit of exposure. So that's why we did what we did. We used the theme. You'll notice that I'm a big American football fan. And we kind of used the whole American football, the NFL, because it is football season in the U.S. Thus we wore referee jerseys, and we made cards. Everybody got a trading card. Each property management software company got a trading card. And we marketed the session by introducing Kathleen, Linda, we did 3 a week, and introduced each representative from each software company and generated a buzz to get people to start thinking about what they were going to do at VRMA, and hopefully they would attend our session. So really, it was about giving property managers all that they need to not make a final decision, but narrow down the choices.
Yeah. Oh, and then become aware of who's out there and what's out there. And there are choices. There are so many choices. Kathleen, I did jump in and interrupt, so I'm going to come back to where we were. Just before I did cut you up, you were talking about buy-in from them. So going out there and reaching out to them and then getting the buy-in.
Buy-in was very important from the companies that participated with us. The reality is we are very similar to your ideology. We were not going to put people in a position for them to be put down on stage. We had clear rules for both the participants, the audience, and the public general at large, is that this session was an empowering, thought-provoking, informational session. It was not a place to air gripes. It was not a place to put down the person next to you or to call out any deficiencies in any software. And that was something that we came from the very beginning, because we knew that this session could only move forward if we had the buy-in of the property management software companies to participate. And one of the ways that we went about doing that is not only setting these ground rules, but the other thing that we wanted to do was give them, some time to present themselves to what we were hoping was going to be a packed room. And it was a packed room. Yeah. And, the thought going forward and thinking about that was, if you had 60 to 90 seconds, the traditional elevator pitch, what would you do and what would you say and how would you stand out? And that's exactly what played out in the session. Was we gave them the opportunity within 90 seconds to tell us who they were and what they wanted the audience to know about them. It was a masterclass in all different forms of how people chose to introduce themselves. But what was very interesting after that entire exercise, of which there was tap dancing and scrolls and the like, was that an actual leader of one of those companies came up to me afterward and said, I didn't realize that my team could not articulate themselves in the way that others could within 90 seconds. And that was an area of opportunity for them moving forward. And I thought, not only were the participants getting something out of the sessions, but the PMS companies got a learning item or an area of opportunity out of the session as well.
So that's amazing. I think I can't agree with you more. There's 3 elements that I think are really important to that session. One was getting all the PMSs together and raising people's awareness that there are many choices, and giving them a bit of a foundation for them to work from to make some decisions about how they're going to run their business and what kind of partnerships they're going to have. The second one is if you want a masterclass in how to pitch your business, that was a very, very good example of seeing that many people come up and come at different angles and different perspectives to talk about their business and how they're going to go about that. And I spoke to a few of the property management companies afterwards because I didn't know what was happening, but I saw it on the calendar. I got to go to this. I'm so curious to see what it's going to be like. And a lot of them were practicing, like really, really heavily pitching, practicing in front of the mirror, super nervous, so nervous. It's probably one of the most challenging things. And then the third part for me, because I'm always observing those things, not just what the content is, but also how do people interact? Because then you learn so much about how you pitch your own business, how to do things, but then also the format as well. The format was designed to be a bit more fun, right? Because at the end of the day, technology, software as a service, property management systems, unless you really love tech, it's not the most fascinating topic, right? Would prefer to be talking about, guest experiences or things with a little bit more impactful, that sort of thing. But technology it's not that sexy. So seeing that format and how that played out was really important. And all 3 of you were hosting that. Linda, tell me more about that structure of the hosting of the session. For those that didn't see it, like what did it look like? and kind of how it was divided up, because there were some quite cleverly thought out different bits and pieces.
Yeah, so Alisa was basically our ringleader and referee, and we did introductions, and as we said, everybody got their 90 seconds to speak. And then Kathleen and I came up with a number of good questions that were kind of easy yes or no for each of the software companies to hold up their big fingers and their logos to say, yes, we have this, or no, we don't have this. And, we all had the flags so that if people were embellishing or something like that, we could, with fun, throw down a flag and say, I don't know about that. But we did that. And then we did allow at the end some questions from the audience. And honestly, we could have used another 2 hours to get through that Q&A part of the session. But it did give other people in the audience a time to participate and, ask some questions that perhaps we hadn't thought of, but obviously we didn't have the luxury of time to be able to allow the property management companies to really articulate, in detail about some of the questions and specifics, which really brought us to why we did the whole, the advanced paperwork and all.
And I think that was the stroke of genius, whoever kind of said, hey, we've got to do this. And I mean, obviously it makes sense if you kind of work through it, but stroke of genius, but also a monumental amount of effort.
Yeah, it was.
Like big. I know. Like to put together a guide of that length, and even like it's even very well, the formatting of it, and like the tables and the tick boxes and all that kind of stuff. People take it for granted, but there's kind of design that goes into it, and there's different color coordination, accounting, and guest thing. I'm just looking through it. So, just to put that together, and then also from a UI UX perspective, so someone that was reading it so that they can actually find it useful and get the right information out of it. That's a huge thing. Let's talk about that for a second. How much work?
So I want to give a shout out to Neely Hansford. She's a Silicon Travel designer. And she put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into designing those tables and to making sure that the colors were different colors. And even if you flip through it from the side of the page, you can see you can see accounting, she put a lot of detail into it. So shout out to Neely. But that was the other idea with the theme. Giving us a theme gave her something to design around. Sure. And it also gave us the ability to carry that design of those sports cards, whether, baseball card type social media posts, that design carried on over into the document that she put together. Yeah. And the compilation of check boxes and full-on paragraphs of information. Boy, sure. Linda and Kathleen and Neely and I were just struggling, but we got there.
The data gathering is huge. So we run a conference here in Australia, and we'll have our sponsors. So we'll get anywhere between 10, 20. This year, it might be even bigger. We might get to 30 sponsors. So even getting all of our sponsors, and I love you sponsors, but to get them all to all do the paperwork that we need them to do so that we can promote them, it can be really challenging at times, especially when they have so many events. And so we do forms, and then they fill out the forms, and we hope that everything's on there, and then the logo's broken or whatever, or they haven't done their bio properly, or it doesn't fit. And then we've got our speakers as well. So that data point, and it's part of the buy-in process as well, Kathleen, right? So, not only you're saying, hey, do you want to do it? It's like, hey, you're going to have to commit a bit of time and effort into this as well. But tell me about that data gathering point of view. How hard was it?
The data gathering was about as difficult as you could expect. There were messages that came to us saying, oh my God, this is 120 questions. Where is the save button? I'm going to need to drink to finish this. I don't even know the answers to all these questions. And so it not only was it getting people to fill it out, it was to get them to fill it out by a certain time frame in order to allow us to put that into a usable format. And of course, in traditional fashion, like every company, deadlines moved for some. Deadlines moved even further for others. And then there were others who chose not to even meet the deadlines, even with the extensions. So we really did our best to provide as many people to participate as possible. If it sounds even crazier, there could have potentially been more people on the stage who chose not to continue on. But I do want to touch base because you did talk about, how did we get here? This was months of work. And what made our session stand out more than anyone is we didn't just commit to doing the session. What's worth doing is worth overdoing. And we overdid this within an inch of its life. If there was a way to make it more interesting, more exciting, more fun, we tried to do that. We tried to make it more informational. And that's why we really pushed these property management software companies to provide us really relevant information in that book and to commit to answering those questions in order to participate on the stage. That was one of our most important wickets for participation was you had to fill out that document to participate. And you couldn't get access to the audience unless you did that. And, some people chose not to, and that's their right to do. But those that did, filled that out to the best of their ability and gave the information that they thought was true at the time of the printing of that document. But, committing to that theme and not only providing that document, but providing what was essentially, a sports event happening, from the music that was playing to people throwing swag in the audience, to the referees walking around. I mean, we tried to make it as fun as possible for participants to not have that dreaded, nodding off after lunch session, which we've all sat through.
There's none of that. That is, the room was full of energy. So let's say we go out and we approach 50 other property management companies, or 20, or whatever the number was where you started off. Just out of curiosity, of the first to reach out, what percentage came back to you and said, hey, this is a good idea, and not? And one thing that I'm also noticing as we do this, we haven't named any one software, which I'm really proud of, and I think that we should keep it that way. So when we answer the questions, don't trip me up now, because I really want to just keep it really, really like that. But what was the percentage of just the first reach out, hey, we want to do this thing, are you in or out? Was it 100%, 80%, or was it 20%? We're going to have to work really hard on this.
Most everybody was really excited about it. It was when the questionnaire got on their desk that people started backing down a little bit, because it was daunting. I mean, even just us coming up with the questions was a lot of work before it even got to them. So that's where we started losing people. And I think some of it was probably timing, but also, there were people who didn't want to share certain aspects of their business, which, is their right to do. So like Kathleen said, we did give everybody every opportunity.
And we stretched it, those questions, they needed to pull in their sometimes a developer or their accounting specialist, or, a lot of them said, hey, I need a little more time because I have to meet with this department or that department, which was great because then they're really getting you honest answers.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, as I'm thinking about this, if I was to be pitching this and talking about it, I would also stress to them that it's a huge opportunity to reflect on their own businesses. Not about looking at what the competitors are doing, but just look at themselves and go, all right, where are we at? And go, oh gosh, we got these items. How strong are we in these things? Almost do a SWOT analysis on each individual question or element that you're asking them. So I think there's a huge amount of value to them in that as well. Now, we have a bit of a problem because we like to keep the accommodation show short and sweet and to give as much as we can to people. So my biggest takeaway is possible within a short amount of time. So we are going to start wrapping up. My biggest takeaways from this is choosing the right technology is incredibly difficult. And I commend you, the three of you, for taking on that challenge. I love the session. I love what you did. And I love also the fact that you appreciate that it's a step in the journey that needs to happen towards making things a bit more equitable to help people make a decision on what they're meant to do. And I think it's one of those goals which is forever going to be difficult. You've got review systems in place. You've got all these different things to help people make decisions. But when it's that complex and it's in your business, it's really, really hard. So thanks for doing that. that guide, we'll put up a link on the show, and then people can go and fill out, give you guys their email address, and then they'll get the book for it as well. Are there two questions just to wrap us up, and we've only got about a minute or two. And the question is this: are there any final thoughts? And what are we doing for VRMA in Las Vegas?
Give us a few, but we do intend on expanding on this. I have heard from multiple people that this is something they should do every year. Now, the exact same thing, maybe we update the document. You have to remember that that's a hard copy, and these companies, they make changes, they do upgrades, they add things. So that document you have in your hand will
It's gonna be
change.
old in 6 months.
It'll be old by
Yeah.
next VRMA, right? So we can do an update there, but there are some ideas in place to maybe have an extended session where they can throw challenge flags on each other. Potentially, when we ask a question and they all raise their hand, yeah, we got that. Maybe one company could throw a red flag on another company and say, "But do you really have that?"
We'll have a bunch of lawyers in the room with us, right?
I think the one takeaway that was most telling when I asked the question of which property managers in the audience would change their software today if they would face no accounting, no operational, or no data issues. And there were a lot of hands that went up. And so the market is there for people to buy property management software because they're looking for something. Yeah. And I think the great takeaway from this is the property management software community needs to do a better job of answering the call of what the clients need, but also making what they do accessible to the property managers so that they understand that it's meeting their needs.
And
this is
I'm
really
going to
the
jump
first
in, Kathleen, because it's not just the property managers, Bart, it's the vendors. There are other parts of their tech stack that are dependent on property management software. And if you looked in that room, you would have seen that about 30 to 40% of the attendees in that room were potentially vendors, because all of the business that we do goes all back to that software.
Yeah, 100%. All right, good. Look,
sorry, Kathleen.
you're fine.
I think everyone's been very, very equitable, as I wouldn't expect any less from the three of you. Look, thank you for the work. It's kind of like a thankless task, right? Like you just keep on working and plugging and plugging and plugging, and there's like, where's the check at the end of it? And it just never really comes. But the value that you provide, and I wanted to get you on as well to help to extend the work that you did and that message, so more people do download it, and they can have a look through it, maybe come up with their own ideas, maybe share with you some ideas as to things that you could do to help improve it, maybe lend a hand, get involved with this sort of stuff. So thanks for everything that you did. The link will be in the show notes. Now, folks, if you are listening to the episode on Spotify, make sure you leave us a rating if you find this sort of content valuable. If you're on YouTube, then there's the subscribe button below. There's a little thumbs up, so give us a like as well. Ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate all three of you so much. I thank you for what you did, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you again as soon as humanly possible.
Thank you for having us.
It was wonderful.
Yeah,
have a good day.
Thank you, Linda and Kathleen.